At 10:48 p.m. on a cool May night in 1983, a small red car eased toward the emergency entrance of an Oregon hospital. The vehicle did not screech in, nor did it show the speed or desperation of a frantic flight from danger. Instead, it moved at a deliberate crawl, almost cautiously, gliding along the road at approximately 5 to 7 miles per hour. Inside were 3 small children, 7, 8, and 3 years old, each shot at close range. One, Cheryl, was already gone. Another, Christy, could barely breathe. And the youngest, Danny, would be paralyzed from the waist down forever. Behind the wheel sat their mother, 28-year-old Diane Downs, with a minor bullet wound on her left arm and blood on her clothes. Her immediate, carefully delivered account was simple. A bushy-haired stranger had stopped her car on a dark road, demanded the vehicle, and then, upon her refusal to surrender, had opened fire on her family. It was a scenario made to be believed, a random act of violence striking a devoted mother, and it was designed to generate instant belief and immediate sympathy. Yet the slow, controlled speed of the car, noted by witnesses along the route, offered the first factual paradox. A genuine mother with 3 bleeding children has one instinct overriding all others: to get help as fast as humanly possible. And the measured, gentle approach to the hospital directly contradicted the heroic racing narrative she supplied. In the immediate chaos of the emergency room, as nurses and doctors scrambled to perform life-saving measures on the 2 surviving children, a second psychological anomaly presented itself in the mother's demeanor. Diane Downs was oddly composed, lacking the expected wailing, the hysterical pleading, or the desperate, uncontainable grief that real trauma typically generates. Her focus was not primarily on the small, critically wounded bodies on the gurneys, but on carefully and precisely explaining the exact details of the story she had constructed. She spoke at length about her own struggle, emphasizing her bravery, her quick thinking in trying to outwit the stranger, and her refusal to surrender the car, presenting herself as both victim and hero in the same practiced breath. This instant and persistent shift to controlling the narrative, centering her own role and perceived bravery, lodged itself firmly in the memory of the staff. It was a persistent pattern of performance, not raw, instinctive grief, a deliberate crafting of an acceptable image while the lives of her children hung dangerously in the balance.
Before we go on, a small favor, please subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot. Thank you, and let's continue with the story.
To understand the origin of that calculated impulse, the focus must shift backward, rewinding nearly 3 decades to her upbringing in Phoenix, Arizona. Diane Fredrickson, born in 1955, was raised in a conservative, deeply religious household, governed by rigid rules and strict moral expectations. This structured environment, though outwardly safe, created an internal structure where obedience was mandatory, but the resulting affection was conditional and often felt absent. As a teenager, she reacted against the walls of that confinement, challenging rules on dating and modesty, trying to carve out an identity that was truly her own. She absorbed the subtle, corrosive message that she was fundamentally insufficient, not the popular girl, and not the right kind of daughter. This profound deficit in inherent self-worth taught her a destructive lesson. Attention, regardless of its source or quality, instantly felt like proof of her existence and value. That deep, unyielding craving for external validation became the core flaw in her adult life, expressed most clearly in the fundamental mismatch between the public and private realities of her motherhood. She embraced the idea of being a wife and mother, liking the image it presented to the world, the appearance of stability, convention, and devotion. The tedious, daily, repetitive labor of caring for 3 small, needy human beings, however, held no genuine interest for her. 3 children arrived, Christy, Cheryl, and Danny, and Diane constructed a dual track that served her self-image. Publicly, she was the overworked, self-sacrificing mom, battling through tough circumstances. Privately, as her ex-husband and other witnesses observed, she lacked genuine maternal instincts, treating the children with harshness, quick anger, and cold dismissal. Crucially, she discovered that playing the role of the devoted mother, especially as a single woman later on, reliably earned sympathy, compliments, and outright admiration, providing her with the small, necessary doses of attention she craved. The children were, in essence, reduced to mere props in her personal narrative, existing primarily to demonstrate her burdens and showcase her perceived strength to an admiring external audience. By the early 1980s, following her divorce from Steve Downes, this internal tension escalated into an outright conflict between her true desires and her domestic responsibilities. On one side was the constant, non-negotiable reality of meals, baths, homework help, and ordinary care demanded by 3 dependents. On the other was a deep, unyielding hunger for freedom, excitement, and a new life centered on constant, romantic attention. This intense focus on her love life was not a secondary detail. It became the central gravitational force pulling her away from her family. She was attempting to pursue a relationship with a former co-worker and lover, Robert "Nick" Knickerbocker, who had made it explicitly clear that he had no desire to have or raise other people's children. Through a series of small, cutting, and resentful comments to her friends, a clear pattern solidified in her mind. The children were not her family. They were simply an immovable barrier blocking her access to the preferred fantasy version of her life. She wanted out of the anchoring reality of motherhood, and her 3 small passengers had become the primary obstacle to the freedom she believed she deserved. This motive represents a specific structural failure point common to many acts of profound interpersonal harm, where the perpetrator allows other human beings to cease being seen as complex lives and permits their reclassification as simple, inconvenient problems to be solved. Once this destructive psychological mechanism takes hold, the range of possible actions for the individual widens into dangerous territory, making neglect or even physical harm feel like a logical, necessary step. Inside Diane's mind, the desire for freedom merged seamlessly with a growing architecture of self-justification. She felt trapped, she felt misunderstood, and she felt owed a better, freer existence. This intricate self-deception painted cruelty as a simple necessity to solve a problem only she truly understood, allowing her to move the moral line one small step at a time until the unthinkable violence became an imaginable, justified action.
Before we go on, a small favor, please subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot. Thank you, and let's continue with the story.
In her own internal narrative, she was not, and could not be, a monster. She was merely a woman taking drastic action to correct a situation that had gone profoundly wrong for her. The path to that dark rural road was constructed not only by Diane's internal choices, but also by the collective failure of bystanders to connect the quiet warnings that were already visible. People who knew her privately would later recall the constant, unvarnished complaints about the children, the cold demeanor, and the way they seemed subtly tense or withdrawn whenever she entered the room. These observations represented the small, chilling near misses of timely intervention, moments where a friend, a neighbor, or a relative might have been compelled to voice a suspicion or offer a concerned, intrusive query. The full, crystallized danger did not fully emerge for external observers until the crime had already been committed. This omission, the failure to recognize and act upon the widening, obvious gap between the public mother image and the private coldness, created the essential structural space Diane needed to execute her plan with temporary impunity. On the night of the shooting, 3 elements converged in perfect, chilling alignment. A dark, rural road providing isolation and opportunity, the narrative of the stranger to absorb all the blame, and Diane's proven, practiced ability to perform the role of the beleaguered victim. Her detailed account included a dramatic sequence where she claimed to have pretended to throw the car keys into the bushes to distract the attacker, a move designed to sound highly heroic and tactically clever. However, police investigators conducted a thorough search and found no evidence whatsoever that the keys had actually been thrown or that the scene had been disturbed in the manner she described. This specific detail was too polished, too cinematic, serving as a clear warning sign. Real victims of sudden extreme stress may forget minor details, but they almost never invent dramatic, complex set pieces that leave no physical trace. The lie was constructed not from a blurred or panicked memory, but from purposeful invention intended to sell the urgency and the singular bravery of her own role in the event. The entire case generated a profound societal unease that ran deeper than the facts of the violence, largely because the sudden, fatal threat came from the person society is trained to trust most, a mother. The majority of public danger narratives focus on archetypal male figures, the violent husband, the unknown stranger in the dark. But here, the existential threat was expertly masked by the camouflage of a caregiver. For decades, the powerful cultural assumption that mothers simply do not commit such horrific acts served as a structural shield, providing Diane with the space she needed to operate and deflect all initial suspicion. This profound inversion of the expected natural order, a woman weaponizing the protective stereotype of motherhood, disturbed the public consciousness at a fundamental level. It forced a necessary confrontation with the difficult truth that those who talk most loudly and constantly about their love and devotion are sometimes only using that precise language as cover for a deeper, entirely self-centered agenda. In the months that followed the shooting, before the truth could be fully established by forensic evidence, Diane relentlessly maintained her elaborate performance in the public eye. While the surviving daughter, Christy, was recovering from a bullet wound that caused a stroke and initially impaired her ability to speak clearly, Diane used the resulting investigative gap to her advantage. She moved freely through media interviews, dated other men, and even became pregnant again by another romantic partner. She appeared on television, heavily pregnant, smiling inappropriately at times, and naming her unborn child Angel, while relentlessly insisting that a faceless stranger had ruined her entire life. This public eagerness for airtime, her unusual calmness, and the relentless focus on her own perceived victimhood, rather than the profound horror suffered by her children, formed a powerful, sustained pattern that investigators could no longer dismiss as complex human reaction to trauma. The psychological performance she so diligently maintained eventually collided directly and catastrophically with the undeniable, cold physical facts established by forensic science. Experts processing the small red car noted the complete absence of any external evidence consistent with a roadside attack. There was no telltale mist of blood where bullets supposedly passed inches from the driver's head, no gunpowder residue on the window glass, and no blackening or burned streaks around the window frame. What the forensic team actually observed pointed toward an entirely different structure of events. Shell casings for the weapon lay clearly on the floorboard inside the vehicle, and the nature and angle of the wounds on the children indicated a deliberate, close-range attack from inside the passenger compartment. The initial lie of the stranger demanding the car from outside was thoroughly shattered by the precise, unwavering language of physics and blood spatter. The bullets had unquestionably originated from within the vehicle. Further investigation revealed that Diane's own minor injury was not the desperate consequence of a defensive struggle. It was clear evidence of calculation and staging. Her shot through the arm was relatively neat, a clean wound through soft tissue designed entirely to provide physical proof that she too had been attacked, but critically, without actually disabling her. Doctors compared the superficial nature of her injury to the children's devastating wounds, one fatal, the others permanently debilitating, and recognized instantly the stark difference between an attack meant to destroy and a wound that looked entirely like an afterthought. The specific angle of the bullet on her arm, meticulously mapped out by investigators, fit a self-inflicted shot far better than any scenario involving a struggle with a stranger. The performance of the brave, wounded mother finally collapsed under the unforgiving weight of anatomical and physical reality. The prosecution's case against her methodically stacked the layers of irrefutable scientific evidence against the elaborate human fiction she had woven. They presented the forensic analysis showing the internal trajectory of the bullets, witness statements detailing her unusual and persistent calmness, and private testimony from those who knew her private coldness toward her children. The most powerful, conclusive moment of truth, however, came from the smallest, most vulnerable person in the courtroom. 9-year-old Christy, the surviving daughter whose severe injury had momentarily impaired her speech, took the witness stand. Her testimony was delivered without high drama or lengthy elaboration, offering a simple, undeniable fact. When quietly asked the identity of the shooter, the child gave the only necessary answer: "My mom." This single statement, quiet and absolutely conclusive, placed the final, unassailable brick in the wall of evidence, definitively shattering the entire constructed narrative of the mysterious stranger. The legal outcome was decisive. Diane Downs was tried, convicted, and sentenced to spend the rest of her life in prison plus additional years, explicitly rejecting her continuous narrative of victimhood. The core facts were irrefutably established. She had stopped the car on Old Mohawk Road, taken a .22 caliber handgun, shot each of her 3 children at close range inside the vehicle, and then inflicted her own minor wound to create a false trail of self-defense. The consequences for the surviving children were permanent and irreversible. Cheryl was gone, and Danny remained paralyzed from the waist down, both carrying the profound knowledge that their own mother chose a romantic fantasy over their very lives. The survivors were eventually raised under new names, finding their only genuine safety in absolute, permanent distance from the woman who had deliberately tried to erase them. Despite the overwhelming, irrefutable evidence against her, Diane Downs has consistently maintained her innocence during multiple subsequent parole hearings, rigidly repeating the same narrative of the stranger on the dark road. This persistence of the lie, even decades into confinement, demonstrates the deep psychological commitment to the original self-deception that framed cruelty as a necessary, justified action. Parole boards have continually refused to accept her version, demanding acceptance of responsibility that she adamantly refuses to give. The small residue of uncertainty that remains in the public mind is not about the core facts — investigators know exactly what happened — but about the specific psychological moment she crossed from dangerous thought into final, fatal action. Was it one sudden decision, or a long, slow erosion of empathy over months and years that made the violence possible? For the audience seeking cognitive control, the protective knowledge is found in understanding and internalizing the precise pattern she left behind. The psychological mechanism she employed, weaponizing the social role of a mother, using dependents as mere obstacles, and trying to bend physical evidence to fit a self-serving fictional story, is a dangerous pattern that recurs constantly in different lives and settings. The enduring lesson is simple but intensely difficult to execute in a culture overwhelmed by emotional claims. When words about love and actions of profound care do not align, the definitive actions must be trusted first. When someone's visible performance of suffering continually circles back only to their own pain and perceived victimhood, that behavior is a sign of self-centered control, not genuine distress or deep mourning. The pattern that culminated in the tragedy of the small red car did not begin with a gun or a dark road. It started years earlier, in small, corrosive choices about how to see and how to value other human beings. Seeing that clarity, reducing chaos to predictable psychological architecture, is the first and often only real defense against betrayal. All interpretations are based on publicly available information. This content does not make medical or diagnostic claims, nor does it speculate beyond established evidence.
If you'd like to keep exploring cases like this, there's another one waiting for you on screen. I think you'll find it meaningful. Click on it, and thank you for watching.